Welcome to the Winning Cultures podcast. I'm Jason Piasecki. Culture is one of the most powerful tools companies have to attract and retain great people. And the companies that understand that tend to win. On this show, we're talking to leaders who are building cultures that people want to be part of. Today, I'm joined by Richard Witham, a sales engineer at Motion Dynamics. Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be with you.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about four topics today, and we're going to get into what Motion Dynamics does. Then we'll talk about your journey to the company, how you got to Motion. From there, we'll dive into what makes Motion Dynamics culture unique, and then we'll wrap up with some advice for business leaders who are looking to build a winning culture. So let's jump into what Motion Dynamics does.
So Motion Dynamics, we are a contract manufacturer mostly focused on the medical device market. Now, that focus is about 92% of our company. We also focus on aerospace and defense markets. But that hasn't always been the case. When Motion started, when my grandfather started Motion in 1992, we were a very automotive focused company. And over that time, we've found our niche, our specialty in this precision manufacturing for medical devices.
Yeah, talk about that shift from automotive, because you're located in Michigan, which is a very automotive state, that intentionality on diversifying your base and really zeroing in on medical device and aerospace manufacturing today.
Yeah, I think it really started, what gave us the abilities to be competitive in that precision manufacturing really did come down to the people. In the early days, in the mid 90s, we had a couple spring makers, and those spring makers, one of which is still with us today. They always were pushing their limits, and oftentimes it may not have even been necessary for the application being automotive. But over time, some opportunities presented themselves for medical components, and what really drove the growth was a relationship that we started to build with an outside sales representative out on the West Coast, where a lot of the R&D for medical devices takes place. And it's really just organically built over time. It hasn't been a major marketing effort or anything like that. It's been built upon relationships with these R&D engineers, and it's a tight community. The medical device design market. It's a small world, and we continue to. That's what we continue to do today, and be at the tip of development and innovation.
Okay. Yeah, what's the day-to-day like for your job as a sales engineer, and talking about those relationships you have with the R&D folks? I imagine you do things like trade shows and stuff like that to support your customers. Well, what's a typical day like for you at Motion?
Yeah, from a marketing perspective, trade shows have historically been our main form of marketing, and that really ties into the relationship side of how we do business. Those trade shows, the ones we participate in, they take place in these hubs of development, and we use it as an opportunity to meet face to face with these engineers that we're working with. And it really is you really do build a relationship with these individuals, because it's not as simple as them coming to Motion Dynamics and having a print prepared and saying we need this spring. Typically they're working to solve a problem. There's not a component that they can purchase over the counter. One of our favorite sayings is, it's not like going down to the grocery store and buying a gallon of milk. It's really an engineered component. And so these relationships just inherently through that conversation, they develop. And So trade shows are always a fun time for us to see those people. But what I attribute a lot of our growth to is working with outside sales representatives that really understand our culture and what we do technically. And because we're a custom manufacturer, we don't have a library of over the counter products. These sales reps have to be able to have that technical level conversation. And we work with two different teams, one in the Twin Cities and one on the West Coast, and we've worked with both of them for well over a decade, and they understand and embody the genuine. It's not like going to a car dealership and buying a car. It's a true collaboration, and that's I really attribute the majority of our success to the relationships that get brought to us by these sales reps.
All right, Richard, let's talk about your journey to Motion Dynamics, because you've got a really unique story. You talked a lot about relationships with as far as the company, but you've got some deep relationships and relations at Motion Dynamics. So talk about how you got to the company.
I've been around the company from an early age. Very quickly I was put to work mowing the lawn, and one of our best marketing tools is the sample pack, and that was one of my early jobs, compiling scrap springs into little bags that we would hand out at trade shows. And so I was at real early exposure to the company, and that's experience that I really do value today in a sales role. Having spent my high school years and summers in college, working on the production floor in various departments, it was a good education to be able to both grow up in this culture, but also to sell our capability. So running coilers at 14, and forming night null wire forms as a college student, and working with our engineering team, it helps you understand and absorb that ownership mentality, and that's really how I see the spring makers and a lot of the technicians that have been at Motion for decades. They have a ownership mentality, and that was something I was exposed to from an early age. Feel very fortunate about that.
You talked about the company being started by your grandpa. So talk about that family connection, and who's involved with the business today.
Yeah, my grandfather started Motion Dynamics in 1992. He had some spring business experience in Muskegon prior to that, but started Motion from scratch with a team of three. Though it's funny, those three people are still here today, my grandfather included. On Mondays and Fridays, there's three generations at the company: my grandfather, my father, and myself, and Norm Moss, which is one of my favorite people to see every day. Norm's in his 80s now, and still has as much passion for what we do, and still embodies that ownership mentality. It's I do not take it for granted, being able to see my grandfather in the office at 87 years old. It's a pretty special thing.
Yeah, that's impressive. And you had a unique journey to get to Motion Dynamics. What did you do prior to coming to the company?
Yeah, I having that early experience and exposure into manufacturing was, as I mentioned, a very, very valuable thing for me. But in your early 20s, when that's all I decided to take a left turn. and I pursued cooking. I loved to cook for my family and friends growing up and while in school, and so I moved to northern Michigan and pursued that. And it's funny how I make connections to the hospitality kitchen industry and what we do, whether that be a customer first mentality or the nature of some of the operations in our plant. There's a lot more similarities than one would think, and it was that was a good experience for me personally. It helps put everything into perspective, help me realize how special motion dynamics is, the team, and what we're capable of. And so I've been back at the company now for it's just my 9-year anniversary the other week. So it's that experience served me very well. But it's special to be a part of something that truly has an impact on people's lives with our focus in the medical device industry.
Well, now you're talking my language. We gotta talk about your signature dish. My wife and I were always watching TV as Bobby Flay or Andrew Zimmerman or just whatever cooking show is on. So, what's your signature dish?
My favorite thing to make, and I think my wife and daughter's favorite thing to eat, is spaghetti bolognese. A cold winter weekend, we'll throw that on in the morning and let it go all day. Like you see in Goodfellas and things like that. There's something about that dish that is so comforting and fun to make. Whole house smells good, and leftovers are always great. So.
That sounds wonderful.
My favorite thing to eat. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's get back into motion dynamics and your culture. What do you feel makes Motion's culture unique?
I think the nature of the industries that we participate in, medical, it carries some inherent significance in that work, importance. Just the fact that these little pieces, parts that we're manufacturing are either going to go into somebody's body or be a part of a procedure that could potentially save a person's life. That carries weight, unspoken weight, and I think that that coupled with the engineering ownership mentality that has always existed at Motion, even back when the company started in the 90s. That's a special atmosphere. Those things all considered. People take the work they do very seriously. This isn't just pressing a button on a particular operation. There's a lot of craft in the parts that we make. It's special, and people realize that very quickly when they start here.
What type of person do you feel thrives in your culture?
Somebody that has a level of confidence to carry a ball, to take that ownership on a part all the way through its production until it ships out the door. An example of that is one of our most senior spring makers. He's Norm Morton, and Mort, as we call him. He was one of the early employees, and Mort's notorious for he makes a lot of the components for a part of our defense market, and he takes that responsibility very seriously. He wants to be the one to perform each operation, both coiling the component to some secondary operations. There's just in exceptional level of ownership in the responsibility for that component. And, Mort's attitude is contagious. Um, and it really has spread as we've grown. People really embody that.
What have you done to intentionally build that culture at Motion Dynamics? What type of rituals or routines reinforce that type of ownership and care that you're sharing?
A big part of it is our weekly routine. Monday through Friday, 8:30, the core team meets. We review every new order that comes in the building. We review anything special that any one department might be focused on that week. And the idea is that there's an open collaboration that doesn't just fall within a department. It truly is a team focus on any particular issue. So those Monday through Friday routine meetings, I think are really special. Secondary to that is every Tuesday at 6 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So I'm sorry, 6 o'clock in the morning for third shift, 8:30 for first shift, and 4 o'clock for second shift. We get all of those teams together, and Chris, our president, he talks about various things from monthly sales and target and how we're pacing for a particular week. Some of the metrics I'm really focused on are on-time delivery. So a commitment we make to a customer, meeting that ship date. Any rejections for quality issues. That's one we take very seriously. And we always talk about any new customers. Many of our new customers are startups, and they're working on prototypes, and it's typically a very innovative component. And so we'll show and explain a particular procedure and give background to the team on, what, their influence on a component, what that's going into. We really try to educate ourselves, educate the whole team about the difference we're trying to make. So those Tuesday meetings, doing that and reinforcing it weekly. I think it really, really brings the team together, kind of unifies that vision. Every month we meet our sales plan. We have a company luncheon, which is always a lot of fun. And I just think that reinforces the ownership mentality here. Just these weekly routine things.
Yeah, communication sounds like a big part of the reason your culture's so strong, and communicating that internally. How do you communicate your culture externally, to let candidates or people that may be considering a career change know about what your company does?
Yeah, that's something that actually Revel, the team, has been very helpful. I think being a team of engineers and technically, minded and focused people hasn't always lent itself to, marketing ourselves to the community. I think just in terms of, motion dynamics, general awareness in the community, we try to participate in things like polar plunge, and we sponsor women's cycling teams, and the Ragnar race. There's always a group from Motion that participates in that, and so there's some of these more community involvement. But when looking at recruitment, marketing our capabilities and what we do and what we participate in it just hasn't been something we've had to do. But our growth in the past 10 years has really required us to do that. So Revel has certainly helped us better understand how to do that, and really project ourselves as an advanced manufacturing company, which is a unique thing in the Muskegon area. Most people's perception of manufacturing is steel foundries and dirty and dimly lit environments, and motion is really more of like a laboratory environment. So it's Revel's been really really helped enlighten us in how to advertise that.
Yeah, well, you're very typical of manufacturers, especially ones that are in the Midwest. Is you like to keep your cards close to your vest and not share about all these great things that a company like yours is doing. And so I think really getting out there, and it's essential in today's environment. The majority of people that are going to apply for a job are going to check out your website. They're going to look at your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your social media, and so being able to project that authentic culture is a big part of why Motion has continued to grow and your culture has thrived. So before you talked about metrics. How do you know your culture is working? Is it a feeling? Is there numbers that you look at? Your leadership, HR, how do you know Motion Dynamics culture is really clicking?
It's a good question, Jason. My guess is if you asked different people here, they might have different answers for you. Me personally, I really pay attention to quality. Because of the tight tolerances and the real precision requirements of the parts we make, it takes a high level of engagement from any technician or operator, regardless of what capability. That's why I pay such close attention to what we call RMAs, which would be like a return from the customer. I pay really, really close attention to that because to me it tells me if people are continuing to embody that ownership mentality, that engineering hat, that striving to operate at the highest level. To me, that's what tells me that it's being managed well in this growth we're experiencing. But separate from that, I I love seeing communities form within our culture. Whether that be the group of probably a dozen people now that go and walk at lunchtime together, or the mountain bike ride that takes place weekly in the summertime. You see people. To me, that tells me just the bond and close family-like culture that continues to build here is probably second to the quality aspect.
Yeah, those are great traditions.
Yeah.
Because this is where the rubber meets the road. And what kind of advice would you have for business leaders who are trying to build a strong culture? What matters most?
It really does start with the people. We really focus on character during our interview process. Because it's we're a unique manufacturing company, and typically not hiring people that have experience in the capabilities that we have, like laser welding. It's I don't know that we've ever had somebody apply to Motion Dynamics that actually had laser welding experience. So we're really looking at people's character, who they are, their interests outside of work that tell us would they be a better fit in departments that are more fast-paced and there's multitasking, or if there's a real focus on precision. We try to really focus on the person. And especially as you get into a company of a couple, several hundred people, I think it's critical that anybody that you're adding to the team have the capability to embody the existing culture. I think it really starts at the people, because the ownership mentality and things, I know those will be absorbed naturally from how the existing team operates. So I really think it starts with people.
So when you talked a lot about the character and assessing that. How do you do that in your interview process?
So we always do an initial interview, typically with some of our operations team who has a good understanding of the skill sets needed to excel in their department. But our president, Chris, my father, he participates in every second interview. Probably the person that culture is one of the most important things to him. He makes sure it's both communicated to an applicant, and he's part of that. Getting to know the applicant to understand their fit. I think you have to have those people that take it so seriously be a part of building it.
Yeah, definitely starts at the top, and you can see it carried through organizations like yours, that strong culture and those values and that alignment. If you had to think of one story, and you've shared a couple stories as we've gone through this conversation, but one story to someone considering joining your team that embodies your culture, what would that story be?
I would. I talked about Norm Morton, one of the spring makers that's been here from the beginning. His wife also works at Motion. Both of them have worked here for over 25 years now. But Mary Lou Morton is somebody who embodies the essence of our culture. She's worked in nearly every department and is now a part of the sales team. Every single day she commutes 40 minutes from Hesperia. She's done that for over 25 years. And she hits the ground running. She holds all of us accountable. She embodies the ownership mentality of, from beginning to end of the manufacturing of a component. She wants to operate at the highest standard. And anybody that's either been a part of Mary Lou's team, she should walk by my office right now. Anybody that's ever been a part of her team very quickly understands the high level that we want to play at. So it's been having those people be a part of the culture for decades that's helped us build and maintain it.
So communication, caring, ownership are three of the common elements that I heard from you today, and I think that would embody what makes Motion Dynamics culture so strong. Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing your story and your time. We appreciate it, and for everyone listening and watching, thanks for tuning into the Winning Cultures podcast.